Hey guys, welcome to the channel, and today I'm doing a little bit of work on my E39 M5, and as you can see I have the whole intake plenum off, and it gave me a good idea. I have a great opportunity to show you guys the difference of the factory throttle bodies versus the bored out and larger Dinan throttle bodies. Okay, so this is a little unusual of a car because most cars that have the Dinan throttle bodies are either an S2 or an S3 car, and this is neither of those. It's just kind of dumb luck that it happens to have these throttle bodies, and I also have the factory ones, which usually were sent in for a core, so it's a little unusual of a situation, but I can give you guys a good side-by-side comparison of them. Now, the Dinan throttle bodies are fitted to the car, and I actually installed these throttle bodies on this car back in 2009, 2010-ish, and at the time, I didn't even own the car. I was just working on it for a good friend, and he was able to source those throttle bodies off eBay, of all places, and I went through and installed them and synchronized them with all the special tools, so we're all good to go. Since he purchased those on eBay, he was able to retain all of the factory throttle bodies. Back in the day when they were available, you had to send these throttle bodies back in for a core charge, so since he bought them off eBay, no core charge, we have the factory throttles. So is what I can do is I can show you guys a good comparison of the size difference of the blades. I'll set that in there. So I already went ahead and measured, and these factory throttle bodies here, they're 50 millimeters in diameter on this inside diameter. This larger diameter doesn't matter because that's where the velocity stacks go ahead and sit in there. And if you look carefully, you can see that there's quite a bit of lip there from this transition, and where the velocity stacks sit, that's actually 54 millimeters. So there's a 2 millimeter gap on either side, 4 millimeter difference. On the Dinan throttle bodies, this bore up here remains at the 54 millimeters, and down in the throttle body, they're bored out to 52 millimeters. So it's a 2 millimeter difference in between each throttle body. I would like to pull these off and look at the bottom and compare them, but due to what it takes to get these off, and with synchronizing the throttles on the car, that's something that I'm just not going to do right now. That's a lot of work, and there's specialized tooling, so we're just going to go ahead and leave it alone. Maybe we'll go ahead and crack those throttle blades open and see if we can look inside of the flashlight and see if there's any difference to how they line up with the factory head ports. Okay, so I got the throttles propped open so we can take a look down in this velocity stack and try to see if I can get a good light. Let me switch the flashlight here. There we go. And you can see where they bored it down. And also, if you look carefully down towards the bottom, right at the port to the head, they did a little bit of machine work, and it looks like it's a pretty much perfect match to the head port. So they opened that up to match. And I checked on the factory throttle bodies, and that machine work is not there. So they did go ahead and bore these at the top, and then it stops a little bit below the throttle plate, and then you can see the machine work pick up again a little bit down, maybe a half of an inch from the bottom of the throttle body. So it looks like if one really wanted to, they could go and do a little bit more cleanup where the transitions are on there, but I don't think that's worth it in the end. Now, on the velocity stacks, they're quite a bit different. You can see these right here are the factory plastic stacks, and 6 of them are all identical. The 2 front ones where you have one for the left side and one for the right side. On the Dinan stacks, only 4 of them are symmetrical. These 2 are the same, and these 2 front ones are the same. So these are left and right, these 2 are the same, and these 4 are the same, quite a bit different. Now, I went ahead and measured these, and again, one thing to note, these are still at the 54 millimeters. That matches the factory 54. So these velocity stacks are interchangeable with either throttle. So there's no difference if I'm running the Dinan stacks versus the OEM plastic ones. Interestingly enough, when the Dinan throttle bodies were originally purchased, he didn't have the velocity stacks, and I installed the throttle bodies with the factory stacks. And the previous owner is a patient man. He waited and kept an eye on eBay. I think he waited 8 years before he found a set of stacks that were separate from the throttles to buy them up and make a matching set. I do remember that he reached out to Dinan to see how much it would cost to have a set made, because they were no longer in production, and they pretty much priced them out of the option of doing that. They wanted, I don't even remember how much, but it was astronomical to make a set, because it would have been a bespoke one-off set. So he just played the patient waiting game, got lucky, bought them, and he installed them himself. One thing that I want to mention is I went and measured these factory stacks, which it's hard to see, get some light in here. But I actually measured on the inside throat, and the opening of the factory throttle body is 52 millimeters. But actually down in this throat, probably half an inch in, these choke down to 45 millimeters. So they actually get quite a bit smaller than the opening of the throttle. And it seems that these are probably much more of a restriction than the throttle would be itself. The Dinan stacks stay true to the 52 millimeter all the way through. And also, if you note, they are about an inch to an inch and a half shorter than the factory stacks. Also, these are made out of aluminum. They're all TIG welded, which is a very nice piece with a billet bottom flange. And if you can look on the inside, it might be hard to see, all the welds are hand finished and it's very smoothed out. So these are definitely very nice pieces and definitely worth the money. I would probably say that there's more labor and time involved in Dinan making those stacks than there is with them actually boring out the throttles and making the new throttle plates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set the Plenum back on, and then I'll be able to show you guys the difference in layout of the factory stacks versus the Dinan stacks. Now that we have the Plenum back on, I went ahead and just placed in the factory OEM velocity stacks, so that way you guys will have a good visual and comparison of the difference of these OEM ones versus the Dinans. So there's really not much to talk to right now. You're going to have to compare visually once I place the Dinan ones in and see the comparison of the two. And here we are with the Dinan stacks on, and you can see the difference. They're quite a bit shorter. They've changed the angles of them a little bit, and really you can see that one hugs pretty tight. Now the four that were all identical are these rear four back here. These two are a little, the difference of these two was that they have a shallower bend to them. They're not as tall as these rear ones, and there you can see that they're clearance on the top and then also on the bottom, and that's for space because the Plenum cover tapers down in that area. And then naturally these ones are specific because they curl around to the back sides. So there's the visual difference on these. Unfortunately, I know a lot of you want to know what the gains are, what it even feels like. And bad news on this one is these throttles were installed, like I said, well over 10 years ago, and we didn't have the velocity stacks when I installed the throttles. And I did reach out to the owner and asked him if he could remember if he felt any big gains when we put the throttles on. I don't remember anything specifically that stood out when we installed the throttles. He said that it just felt a little happier up top, and then later on when he put the velocity stacks on, which was like 8 years later, he said it was the same thing, a little bit more power up top and it was breathing better. The one big caveat to that is when all this work was done on the car, that was done in Denver, Colorado, and they're about 6,000 feet of elevation. I now own the car, and I now live in the Pacific Northwest, not Denver, and I did the best mod you can do to any car. That's the sea level mod. So it's hard for me to judge the difference because when we put these mods on, again, we're dealing with that really thin air in Denver. If I remember correctly, normal atmospheric pressure is like 14.7 psi, and the average pressure up in Denver is only about 12. So you're losing 2 psi on a naturally aspirated engine. It just murders them. So now that I have the car back down here at sea level, it runs so much better than anything I ever remember. And it's really hard to quantify the gains from these throttles. But nonetheless, gave you guys a quick visual, a quick rundown. So if any of you guys stumble across a set of these throttles, jump on them. They were rare when they were new. They've been long discontinued. They're very rare now. Very nice pieces. Pretty cool items to have on your car. As always, guys, thanks for taking the time to watch the channel. Please do check out my other videos. I have more content on this E39 M5, also an E28 that I'm restoring. Appreciate you guys for taking the time. Please drop your comments below, hit the like button, subscribe. Thanks for watching.